Marcil is my favorite character in Delicious in Dungeon, and if you're watching this, there's a good chance she's your favorite character in Delicious in Dungeon too, or one of them, I don't judge. As Delicious in Dungeon aired, Marcil became a bit of an internet phenomenon, where everyone in the anime community was posting the ridiculous goblin faces of the silly elf lady, exasperated by the antics of her absolutely crazy team, a monster-obsessed weirdo, a way too cynical black coffee-drinking old man, and, well, Senshi. Senshi's pretty unproblematic. Overnight, Marcil was Twitter reaction pic royalty, a gift that kept on giving every week, inspiring memes, fan art, cosplays, and everything else that comes with being the breakout star character of a new anime season. But that's not exactly what I'm here to talk about today. All silly faces and Tumblr baby girl posts and whoa haze aside, I think there's a deeper reason why people love and relate to Marcil so much, and that's what I want to get to in this video. But before we get to that, a huge thank you to all my patrons over on Patreon and my YouTube channel members here on YouTube. It's tough being the world's tiniest anime channel. We don't have many sponsors around here, but your guys' ongoing support really helps me keep making these videos. If you'd like to have your name on the screen with a huge thank you and help me put out videos a bit more consistently, you can check out my Patreon. By becoming a member, you get ad-free videos, access to my growing collection of anime and manga reactions, including the first watch and read of Delicious in Dungeon. So if you'd like to see someone go from knowing literally nothing about this series to making video essays on the internet, you can check that out on Patreon. Thank you guys so much, and back to the video. Aside from being a cute, funny, magical elven anime girl, which admittedly does quite a bit of the heavy lifting, there's a reason why people love Marcil. And above everything I just said, it's relatability. It's not hard to relate to Marcil's shock and horror because she's how we might react if we were put into the world Dungeon Meshi presents to us, especially early on. As a viewer, we probably wouldn't initially want to eat these monsters either, especially with the first few being relatively unappetizing, like mushrooms and slimes and skeletons. It's only through learning that monster cuisine is actually kind of a creative culinary art form in this universe, and seeing some actual finished dishes cooked by someone who knows what they're doing, not you, we go, wait, alright, no, that actually looks kind of amazing, damn. Our inherent initial biases were wrong. And the more we learn about Ryoko Kui's world and this endlessly fascinating ecosystem that is the Dungeon TM, we, like Marcil, begin to appreciate and understand what dungeon food is all about. Audience surrogate characters are important in fiction. Even in the most out there, wacky, fantasy-based show there is, there needs to be a normal character who is grounded in reality that the audience can relate to. In a lot of examples of audience surrogates in fantasy, we typically have a character who is the classic fish out of water, that learns what the rules of the world are alongside us, so we as viewers come to understand the world by relating it to ours. Usually, these characters are as far removed from the plot as possible, at least to begin with, so that as they learn about the world, so too does the audience. This is maybe easiest to see in contemporary fiction, where we can immediately begin to piece together the differences between our world and the world being presented to us. We can instantly self-insert because who doesn't want to be whisked away into a life of fantasy and adventure? I mean, that's the entire appeal of isekai, right? But in the case of hard fantasy, it's a little more difficult. There is no real quote-unquote normal outsider characters in Dungeon Meshi, and certainly not ones that don't belong to this world. At least as far as I know, I don't know what you guys are hiding from me. And so Ryoko Kui does something quite brilliant instead and makes the party comprised of characters that all understand different aspects of the world, each with their own specialties, and let's be so freaking for real hyperfixations that they can't help but yap to each other about endlessly. And it's through this casual banter between these characters that we come to understand the world passively as viewers. And I think that's just a really clever way to present a story that might typically get bogged down by endless exposition dumps, flashbacks, monologues, diagrams, and every other anime trope under the sun that we've all seen a million times over. Okay, now let's get back to Marcil. Marcil isn't your typical audience surrogate, even in the realm of audience surrogates. She isn't Sailor Moon getting called into battle as a cosmic warrior girly, or Kagome getting whisked away to feudal Japan, the reincarnation of an ancient priestess. This isn't an isekai, so there's no real world and fantasy world. But There's definitely non-conforming characters, both in perspective and attitude, and Marcil actively defying the central concepts of the series is not only hilarious and constantly used as comedy, but it gives us this surrogate style of character that we, against all odds, can relate to. We're introduced to Marcil alongside the main cast in the very first episode of Delicious in Dungeon, and right away she takes a firm stance in eating anything, well, weird. And we get the sense that, like, oh okay, here's the killjoy character to Laos's fun character, literally refusing to let the man cook. Unbelievable. But maybe what makes that side of Marcil feel so earnest is that it comes from a very real place. In a recent interview that I haven't read because I'm terrified of manga spoilers, Ryoko Kui admits that she's a bit of a picky eater and doesn't necessarily get a lot of joy out of eating food. And honestly, damn, that's the biggest plot twist of this entire series. Forget my other videos. It's like Oda admitting he's always hated pirates and or friendship. Like, how is Ryoko Kui out here drawing the most beautiful meals I've ever seen this side of Studio Ghibli, all while on a diet of dino nuggies, which ironically could be Marcil's nickname for Fallon. Moving on. Food is strangely very present in Kui's works. It's a constant theme of some of her stories in Terrarium in a Drawer, where a lot of the time food is presented as strange, alien, and something that is just not desirable, not disgusting, but just another strange part of life. The short eating symbols has characters cooking and eating geometric shapes in something that is as genuinely bizarre as it is oddly calming and cozy. I feel like that energy, that theme of picky eater woman versus unknown food horrors is alive and present in Dungeon Meshi. It's dramatized and amped up for humor, sure, but it's very telling that the mangaka herself doesn't want to eat any of the food she draws, just like the character in her story. So we meet Marcil in episode 1, but the first episode where we truly get a real glimpse of Marcil the character is in episode 2, where she tries and fails to convince the party to pull the mandrake out in the tried and true conventional way, tie it to a dog, get the dog to run full sprint and pluck it out of the ground until the dog gets lassied down the well by the mandrake screech, traditional methods. The rest of the party shuts this down because, obviously, and Senji just plucks the little screecher creature out of the ground himself. And man, if this isn't wisdom versus intelligence in a TTRPG personified in a single scene, I don't know what is. Right away, it's clear that Marcil is maybe a bit too rigid, a bit too by the books, and doesn't quite grasp how things work outside of her academy lectures. And if you think that makes Marcil haughty and lame, I disagree. Honestly, that might make her the most just like me for real character in the entire series. Anyone can relate to trying to do things exactly how they learned in school, only for the crushing realization that you'll never need to use advanced calculus in your life ever again. In a generation of burnt out gifted kids who are realizing in real time that the world doesn't work like how we were taught, Marcil isn't just like us. She is us. So the basis of Marcil's character in these initial episodes is that her magic doesn't quite work the way she wants it to, which honestly is kind of wild magic 101, I respect it. When she asks if maybe she could cast a spell to help the party out, use magic to fix things up, the rest of the team aren't exactly eager to let my girl flex. But these moments where she does get to let loose, we realize that, oh, Marcil isn't bad at magic, like not at all. In her fight with the Legend of Zelda Water Blob, we get the first look at Marcil in combat, and man, this is such a cool episode. Visually, it's Trigger firing at all cylinders, and one day I just want to draw this scene so bad. Ultimately, Marcil doesn't defeat the Undine with magic, but with something far more powerful. And that's a tasty chug-a-lug, mate. Marcil's magic is obviously incredibly powerful, but it's not working. So we're waiting for this moment where she gets a chance to shine, to truly make a difference, to save someone she cares about. So the reveal later that Marcil's specialty has been necromancy all along is absolutely insane. Suddenly things are starting to click. We're sure that the moment we've been waiting for is right here. It's resurrecting Fallon. Right? I think what makes Marcil strike a chord with us, why she feels like someone we want to root for, is so much of her story is rooted in failure. We're introduced to this world's magic system when she fails at applying the lessons she learned at the academy to practical use in the dungeon. She fails at presenting a plan to the party, and then fails again when she tries to do it on her own. She fails at defeating monsters time and time again. And most critically of all, she fails at her most important goal of the series, saving and resurrecting Fallon, instead dooming her to become part of the Red Dragon and maybe even the dungeon itself. Everything Marcil does has the overwhelming weight of failure, the worst of all being potentially Italian. Oh my god, I can't believe that. But despite everything, it's those failures that make Marcil feel like less of a character in a TV show and more like ourselves, or a friend, or a family member, someone we know or someone we've heard stories of. We can all relate to hardships and setbacks, even if typically they usually involve less fireballs and forbidden magic. In a lesser series, Marcil becomes that joke character, or even worse, a quote-unquote useless female characters that shonen fans with room temperature reading comprehension hate to this day. But Ryoko Kui's sure to never make the endless strays Marcil catches feel particularly rude or damaging. Just like I said in the Laos video, the barbs thrown at the main cast of Dungeon Meshi never feel mean-spirited, and that's kind of the point. Marcil flubbing a spell just feels like your best friend rolling a 1 in D&D. You don't fault them for it, you laugh and hope the next player's turn can pick up the slack. Marcil's little mistakes are funny and harmless, even charming, and it's those soul-crushing failures I mentioned earlier, the losses of things and people we know are dear to her. Those are things we can empathize with. That is why Marcil works. My last video about Marcil was right after episode 19, which was the Nightmare episode, and I haven't really revisited my thoughts towards her since then, nor have we particularly learned more about her in those final stretch of episodes. The prediction in that video and the Thistle video is still more or less my prediction now. I still do feel like there's going to be a lot of character development for Marcil in season 2, maybe for the better, maybe for the worse. She fears being left alone, she fears not being able to save her friends, and worse than that, she knows her extended half-elf lifespan makes those two things an inevitability. That not only parallels the downfalls of other characters seeking reprieve from death for those closest to them in countless other pieces of media, but almost mirrors exactly what we've been told about Thistle himself in this story. The two have a story that seems ominously paralleled, and who's to say if Thistle's failure, leading to his descent into becoming this immortality-obsessed mad mage, who's to say that's not Marcil's as well? At the end of Delicious in Dungeon though, there needs to be some sort of narrative payoff to what's being set up. A character can't just fail forever until the audience loses faith in them, until that character stops being relatable and does become that joke, that punching bag, that picture of Yamcha in the ground. I don't see that being the moral of Marcil's story at all, especially with how consistently great and kind of subversive Ryoko Kui's writing is. I feel like there's so much more to come with Marcil's character. Does she harness that endless font of magic coming from another time and space? Does she know more about souls and forbidden magic than maybe we've been led to believe? Who knows? I'll just have to wait patiently until season 2 and have manga fans throw tomatoes and boo and hiss at me and leave comments telling me to read the manga until that happens. And maybe if you leave a like and comment, I will consider it. I'm just kidding. But unless... Anyway, that's all for today. Be sure to leave a comment, subscribe, and check out the Patreon. Even $1 really helps. I'm so close to being able to do YouTube somewhat full time. So if you'd like to get more stuff from me, that's the best way to let me know. I've been Dom, this has been Marcil, and until next time.